The latest build, yet again, improves Vulkan, only at 80 to 90 FPS in some conditions. Visible changes to the frames, and I am going to show you a novel way, kind of doing this live instead of editing, to show you the differences between the upscales, and I'm just going to do Vulkan on this video. Thank you to my long-term subscribers. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So, we'll take a look at the top right, and live right now what I'm looking at is about 58 frames off and on, and it kind of drops once in a while to 57, goes up to 59, but in general it's in the 58s. Now, I'm literally only going to hit options, go to graphics, and put on upscaling. I do want to note that they changed the name of quality from 66% to 140p plus, and it seems like they have these new nuances for 1440p, 1440p plus, plus and plus, and then 2160p plus for performance. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this on Dlss and watch what happens. Now, be mindful, it takes a second or two for the FPS cooker to kind of get them more up-to-date numbers. But I have not moved the character at all, and you can see that the FPS has gone up. It's not just that either. It seems like the DLSS, in particular for my NVIDIA graphics card, is quite adept at this. If I go to other locations, like on my little test course here, you'll note that you'll start seeing 80s and 90s start perking up. It's more common now. It's kind of like a round thing here. It's like an all around it type situation. So you can see I'm getting consistently in the 70s and 80s in most places, and then dropping into 90s, going up to the 90s, low 90s to be fair, but still, it's pretty good upscaling. Now looking out this window, just yesterday's build, it was sitting in the 40s and 50s, depending on which one we used. And DLSS is now sitting at 65, 64, and jumping around into that circumstances. Not just the numbers, though. I'm going to wait for the little flyby thing, if we can wait for it to trigger. And we'll also take a look at the same high-rise we've been taking a look at for a couple videos now. And you can see the glow is very, very pronounced and good. And you can see the animations of these lights are good as well. It is always a good stress test to see this environment at night to really see what's going on. Here's our little friend. This thing was stuttering just without upscaling. This little animation that kind of goes over there, and then he should come back over here if it's the same one. There might be more than one. But the point is that these things have very good draw distances. All these animations are packed in. All these lighting effects in the distance are all having no problems. That's pretty dang cool. And I mean, we're actually starting to see consistency with these things. Interior, you're seeing in the 70s, jumping into the 80s and 90s. And kind of, I think one commenter put it best, if we could get consistent 60 FPS, that's good enough. And I think maybe we can do better. I think if we can do consistent 70 or above FPS, that's pretty dang cool too. And no, I don't like to lock my FPS if at all possible. I don't mind it kind of fluctuating, but in general, I do think that 60 should be the minimum. You can see why I'm standing here. You can see it was into the 80s and then it was dropping back down. And that's how DLSS 3.7 is doing in the latest build. Now, as we're going into the 419 weekend, let's take a look at FSR and see if it's still able to conduct the same thing. Now, sometimes you'll notice there's a character in the background. Usually I edit them out, and then I have to kill the video, wait until they go by. But lately, the other characters running underneath lights and such, which was just a couple builds ago, was really taxing on the system, have not been impacting it that badly. This is FSR. And I would honestly argue that this is all subjective. It's my opinion on what I'm seeing. But it feels like FSR has a habit of like Steven Spielberging it up. Like it feels like the glow of the lights is a little different. Like they feel more neon-y, I guess is the best description I can offer. And that's why I always share the videos, because I want you, you know, I might be way off base here, or you might like, and that's not to say they're bad. It's not to say they're bad. It's just, I think FSR tends to handle the, after like the, I don't know what the official term is, but I know what I'm seeing is like the glow off of these lights that simulates it being a real light and the play off those lights. In particular, like this, it tends to like add like a mist, like a tiny bit of mist to the effect. And I honestly would say, once again, it's not bad or good. I would say that because FSR does that, it tends to hide low frame rates a little better when it's a high light environment that's causing the trouble. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. Both of them are good before you get your pitchforks out. It's what you like and what works for you. And I think if you have an AMD card with FSR, or you have an older NVIDIA card and you say, hey, you know what? I want to use FSR, or heck, even a 4K card from NVIDIA, I think you're going to be fine with FSR as well. I think you could pick one of these two and not look back. Now, it brings up the question mark. What about the wild card? What about our friend TSR? Well, you get the high frame rates, that's for sure. But I feel like TSR is not quite going to be the one with legs to keep going. Dlss, FSR, these are your two kingpins of this business. Even like little things to me, like the reflections off of these plants. I'm going to pick on this because it is something that it seems like. Did you just catch that? Did you just catch it? Okay, anybody who's complaining about compression, you have to admit that don't look right. The reflection off the plants seems to impact the shading and such, and that seems to be something TSR has trouble with. Compressed, no compressed. This could be a 480p image. You would still notice that. Now notice it did go away, but that pop-in shadow right there. Oof. And the way these shaders work on here. So, okay. So I'm trying to do side-by-side comparisons. So let's go back to our friend Dlss. And you can actually, I don't know if you can feel it on this live video. You might, but you can actually look at the color changes. Look at the color. I mean, literally look at the color. Now let's see if it has the same pop-in, pop-out problem on the shaders. I might eat my words. I might. But I don't think so. I just don't think so. Let's take a look at the colors on FSR. See, there's a magic to this that I think a lot of people, I think you guys and gals, I think you get caught up in a lot of the sales pitches and the team and the camps and stuff. That's okay, but at the same time, what works for you, use. What works for your build, your card. There's that FSR shader glitch right there. It's nowhere near as bad as the TSR one, but it was there. It did take a moment for it to catch up. But once it did, it recovered no problem. I'm trying to trigger it, and it's not causing it. This is what I mean, though. Every one of these has slight nuances to it. And a lot of times you can pick on something like a plant, you can pick on something like a shadow, you can pick on something like, for example, if I walk under these spotlights in third-person view where it has to render all this out through hair and through shiny armors and such. And look how FSR is handling it like a champ. It's sitting in the high 80s, low 90s. It's bouncing around without a care in the world. That's a damn good system. Now, once again, I am trying to be fair and meet everybody's needs here. So let's switch over to, how about we do no scaling? Let's take a look. You can feel it shudder for just a moment there. And you can absolutely see the numbers go way down. In the same scenario, 58. 59, 60, there we go. But you can absolutely see it. 57s as I spin the camera, as it has to render out all these different things. And more importantly, to be fair, the draw distances are going to tax it quite a lot. Because I'm trying to use the speed of the raw GPU card on the GPU. Yeah, 51. Let's bring our friend FSR back. And let's see what it gets. Remember, it needs a second to cook. So the FPS monitor goes back up. And now in the same environment, literally right after it, look at that. 67, 68. That's pretty dang good, considering we are really pushing it to its limits. 73, for goodness sake. Now, you're probably wondering, like, wait a minute, we're watching this and the FPS is dropping up and down. It's because there's actually things happening. Like, there's trains going back and forth here. There's ships taking off that we can't even see, but it's trying to do something with. That's stuff to remember, is that there are things happening in the environment, even like hangar bay doors opening and such, that all of a sudden has more lights to worry about. And those are, you can't just pre-render that. It's opening and closing at, you know, real time. You see the commons down there. Look at how it's taxing the FPS. So there's a lot here, and I think in general, you can see that the future is pretty bright, I think, for this system, and that's before Vulkan's even having its multi-threading. And I have decided I'm going to try to stick to Vulkan as best as possible. Yes, again, I think some of the things that were problems, like the UI, have been slowly but surely getting better. They're not as good as on DirectX 3D 11 yet, but they are getting there, and they're tolerable enough where I don't have to go back. One of the other things that they're still working on is inside ships. So inside the ships, you have the environments of the panels, like the MFD panels, the holograms and such, and in particular, like those, the HUD hologram type things are where most of the problems are on the ships currently. So that's kind of where we're at this moment in this build, and I would say that I'm feeling really good about a 3.23 at least wide test. I would like to see all waves in finally, and that would kind of put us in a prime position to get live going sooner than later, and keep us on target for release of live on for Invictus launch week. And just for the record, this patch is 914.8240 on EPTU, which is currently open to Wave 2 already. So that's Wave 1 and Wave 2. If you haven't already and you do have access, please jump in. If you haven't in a while, and a few patches, dive in. And don't forget to play with your graphics. Even if you go over to the other side, Direct 3D 11, which is the default, you can still use upscaling techniques. And in particular, my upscaling is 1440p because that's what I'm rendering at. My monitor is a 1440p. It is running at 1 millisecond response time. It is a 144 hertz monitor. So the upscaling techniques that I use are traditionally FSR and Dlss. I tend to favor Dlss mainly because I have a 4000 series NVIDIA card, and they have been doing a lot of work, like importing the 3.7 API for Dlss into Star Citizen. So this is a very exciting location. I do jump between them. I do actually like FSR as well. It's not just me giving it lip service, especially because I like to know what's going on for both of them, and I like to see that both of them are doing well. I wanted to also mention that I did change one thing. I went from high clouds to very high clouds because they had a lot of optimization done for clouds. And in fact, my FPS went up. You figured that out. So clearly it's working. I had a theory in the previous video that CIG was working on a single setting at a time. So like as in medium or high or whatever the case may be, and optimizing it. And my theory was proven, at least in this case, true, that very high was the most recent one. Reference mode, by the way, to those who have commented about reference mode clouds, they are now called photo mode, and it has the word slow next to it. So why I have not gone into using reference clouds, I'm now at very high, I'm one step below it, And I suggest you try the same if you're interested in better clouds. Like, you want that flight simulator experience, you want that more immersive experience. I get it. If you want to go to reference though, basically there is a situation where it's drawing out the edges of a cloud and it's really dragging the graphics down, and also it's creating some weird effects between the clouds and the distances. It's hard to judge where they are, so that kind of gives you a bad frame of reference when you're trying to fly safely down to the ground. So I highly suggest using very high if you see how you like it, especially because they just finished the work for this specific build and future builds, of course. And then if you still want to try reference, go for it. It's called now photo mode, and it's in the slow category for that reason. It's mainly going to be used for screenshots if I was to infer anything. And that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I got to tell you, I did not see New Babbage being a place for 70 FPS for me anytime soon on a 4070 Ti non-super. I really didn't see this happening. But apparently it is. Apparently, this is the future of 3.23. Better, higher graphics, more quality of life improvements, slowly marching our way towards persistent hanger systems, and a lot of bugs along the way, of course. But that's kind of where we're at. And these peaks and valleys, if I can stay above 60, I am extremely pleased. That's kind of where my head's at. Everything else is icing on the cake. I do prefer that. I know some like to lock their FPS. I get it. You can do that in the graphics drivers and the graphics settings on your card itself. I get it on a lot of cards. It's not me. I gotta tell you. Now, I do want to mention that other people have pointed out, wait a minute, you're not using 4K. And in my opinion, 4K is great. 4K is great. I get it. But I don't have like a 4090 or a 4080 Super or something. I don't know if 4K is for me yet, and my monitors do not support 4K, so I would have to completely revamp my whole system. And I don't think I would really make that plunge until I'm looking at like over 100 consistent FPS in 1440p, and then start running the numbers and looking pretty hard at 4K. And I say this while the elevators failed. Ironically, these were working a little bit ago when I started recording. In fact, I used them to get from floor 9 where I spawned to floor 4 because I didn't want anyone to say that I wasn't on the same floor and that was a variable that could be confusing everything and confounding variable for the testing. So in general, thank goodness I'm only on to test tonight. But yeah. I also want to take a thank you to some of the newer subscribers. I make these as much for you as I do for myself. I've had a very stressful week, and these type of things kind of help me de-stress and relax, and I do this as a hobby. So do bear that in mind, that I'm not like an official testing center. I don't have a whole team of people. It's just me, and I just do it as a hobby. And I make Star Citizen content, and this is right now the most exciting thing because this is covering a change in accessibility for backers. And I think some of the biggest gains have been for older graphics cards, and I'm taking pleasure in seeing that in the comments section. So thank you all for those who have commented. I mean, we're hearing some guys with 3K series graphics cards that are just absolutely kicking butt with them, and I'm loving that. And even older cards that are still kicking butt. And then we're also seeing large gains on even older cards, you know, hitting from the 20s to the 40s. And that's wonderful. So being able to go into those FPS brackets. And then remember, as I've said a couple times now, it's not just about the FPS brackets. It's also about the feeling and how it looks and how it handles the little glitches and bigger glitches and the problems that are in the game. How does the light process? How does the shadows work? How does the blur happen? How does the Steven Spielberg effect happen or not? Or not? Do you like more realistic mistakes, or do you like more blurred mistakes that make it feel more sappy and more fantasy based and such? That's a real thing, and that's something you yourself, only you can argue. And yes, you might look at both of them and go, I barely see a difference. That's fine too. If you just if you get nothing else from these videos, I urge you to at least, even if you don't want to even restart the game, you just want to stay on DirectX 11 forever until they get rid of it, probably. That's fine. Try upscaling. Try quality, especially if you're running 1440p, or performance if you're running 2160p. Just try it. Pick your flavor and run with it. FSR if you're AMD, of course. And pick one or the other if you're NVIDIA. So, if there's nothing else, do that. Report back. It doesn't have to be here. You can also say it in the local Discords and stuff, and encourage others to check you out upscaling, because accessibility of the game is critical to seeing its survival and growth. And I think that's the most important thing. It needs to be less about everybody just, having a stack of ships and kind of being their own little castle, and more about celebrating a very wide community with all sorts of folks in it. And in that, what I really mean is, bringing in people that don't necessarily have unobtainium gaming rigs, and being able to share this game with your friends who are in that circumstance. I'm not saying you have to go find total strangers, but being able to urge people to show, look, I'm getting upscaling. It's good. If you haven't played the game in a few years, give it a shot. That's how it is. And don't forget to give them your referral, not mine. Give them yours so you get the credit for it. Because, I think that's something else people forget, is to really enjoy reap the benefits of building that community, both in org mates, building your friends list up, and also getting the freebies, both of you and them. And that's something important. And no, I'm not some secret CIG or something. I don't work for them. It's just practical. It's just practical for your own sake and to have a good time.